He let Faye go on a Wednesday, not a Friday, which might have felt intentional, considered. A Wednesday which made it feel like she was a minor inconvenience being cleared from a calendar. Lucian Voss said the words while he was still reading a contract amendment, his fountain pen moving in slow loops across the margin. He didn't look up, he didn't stop writing, he simply said, "Your services are no longer required, Miss Mercer. HR will process your paperwork by end of day," and turned a page. 7 days later, he sat alone in the dim security room on the building's lower level and watched a monitor feed that made him feel like the floor had dropped out from beneath his chair. She had saved his life, quietly, without a witness, without a word, without a single request for acknowledgement, and he had dismissed her like a line item in a budget report. Lucian Voss had built his empire floor by floor. His company, Voss Harbour Developments, controlled a third of the waterfront construction contracts in Toronto, and from the 44th floor of the King Street Tower, the city looked exactly like what it was, a machine he understood precisely how to run. He controlled supply chains, city permits, union relationships, and a network of favors that ran deeper than any official org chart would ever show. He was not a violent man by nature. Violence was loud, and loud things left evidence. He was a careful man, and that carefulness had kept him untouchable for 11 years. The only person in his entire organization who had never once required his careful attention was his bookkeeper, Faye Mercer. If someone had asked Lucian to describe Faye, he would have needed a moment to collect even the basic facts. She was in her late 20s. She wore knit cardigans in neutral colors, oatmeal, slate gray, a deep burgundy that appeared only on Fridays. She kept her dark hair pinned back with 2 clips, never one, always 2, symmetrically placed. She wore flat leather boots year-round, even in February when the rest of the office sounded like a ski chalet lobby. She didn't take a full lunch hour. She ate half a sandwich at her desk at 11:45 and was back to work before noon. She made no noise. She left no trace of herself on the communal spaces. The coffee maker was always full when Lucian arrived in the morning, and he had never once seen her fill it. She was, in the precise vocabulary of his world, frictionless. He had hired her 6 years ago through a placement agency. Her references checked out. Her credentials were impeccable. She had a quiet competence that required no management, no praise, and no performance reviews beyond a standard annual form she filled out herself and left on his desk unsigned, waiting for his signature. In 6 years she had never been late, never been absent, never asked for anything. He had never really looked at her. That was until the Wednesday morning of the Cormac Shea meeting. Cormac Shea was the kind of problem that wore a tailored suit and smiled too wide. He ran a competing development group from a glass office on Bay Street, and he had been circling Lucian's waterfront contracts for 2 years with the patient hunger of something that understood it only needed to wait. He had requested the meeting himself, framing it as a potential partnership discussion, which in Lucian's vocabulary meant, "I found a way in and I'm here to show you." The boardroom was cold, the way Lucian preferred it. Cormac sat across the long table with 2 lawyers and a junior associate who took notes on a tablet. Lucian sat at the head with Rex Dolan positioned behind him, immovable and silent as a load-bearing wall. "The Lakeshore North parcel," Cormac said, sliding a folder across the table, "is currently tied up in a heritage designation review that I happen to know will not go in your favor. We've run the numbers. If that designation holds, you lose your Phase 3 timeline and the penalty clause with the municipal contract activates." He folded his hands. "We're offering to absorb the risk. Joint venture. 60-40 split." Lucian looked at the folder without opening it. He already knew everything in it. He had known for 3 months. He also knew that the heritage review would be resolved quietly by Thursday, thanks to a conversation he had not had in any room with cameras. He pressed the intercom button at the table's edge. "Faye, I need the Lakeshore North variance file, the October version. 3 copies." Silence. An unusual length of time, and press the button again. "Faye." Only the low hiss of dead air. Cormac's smile adjusted itself by 2 degrees towards something that looked like satisfaction. "Problem with the office, Lucian?" It was not a question, it was a chisel finding a crack. Lucian kept his face still. Faye Mercer did not leave her desk during work hours without logging it in the shared calendar. She had not logged anything this morning. Her absence was a data point that made no sense, and things that made no sense in Lucian's world required immediate explanation. 18 minutes passed. He made conversation with Cormac's lawyers. He let Rex refill the water glasses. He kept his jaw relaxed and his eyes level. 18 minutes of holding a performance in place like it was structural. Then the boardroom door opened. Faye walked in carrying 3 manila folders. Her color was normal. Her cardigan was perfectly buttoned. Her boots made no sound on the floor. The only thing slightly different was a faint, barely perceptible tightness at the corner of her mouth. Not stress, not apology, just the quiet presence of a detail she had already filed away and resolved. "I apologize for the delay, Mr. Voss," she said, placing the folders with practiced precision. One to Cormac's side, one to his lawyer, one to Lucian. There was a logistical matter that required immediate attention. Cormac picked up his folder without looking at her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Faye didn't look at him. She stepped back, folded her hands at her waist, and said to Lucian, "Will there be anything else, sir?" Lucian looked at her. She held his gaze for exactly one beat, empty, professional, entirely unreadable, and then fixed her eyes on a neutral point just past his left shoulder, waiting. "No," he said. "That's all." She was gone before the door had fully closed. The meeting concluded. Cormac signed nothing, agreed to nothing, and left the building with the particular energy of a man who believed he had already won. Lucian sat at the empty table after his lawyers had cleared the room. The 18-minute gap sat in his chest like a stone. He was not a man who tolerated gaps. Every minute in his world had an accountable function. His bookkeeper had been absent from her desk for 18 minutes, without a calendar entry, without a word to reception, without a note. And when she returned, she had offered him a phrase, logistical matter, that explained absolutely nothing. He called her into his office at 5:15, when the floor had emptied out. She stood in the center of the room the same way she always did, hands folded, weight evenly distributed, watching him with those quiet, light brown eyes that gave away nothing. 18 minutes, he said. "Yes, sir." In front of a man who came here specifically to demonstrate that I have weaknesses, you handed him one. He kept his voice level, controlled. "I don't need an apology, Faye. I need an explanation. I was dealing with a situation that arose unexpectedly." "What situation?" A pause of exactly one breath. "A personal matter, sir." Lucian looked at her for a long moment. In 6 years, she had never offered him personal. She had never offered him anything except precision and silence. He opened his desk drawer. He placed an envelope on the desk between them. 3 months severance. Direct deposit today. He met her eyes. "Leave your access card on the way out." Most people cracked at this moment. In his experience, the second money appeared on a desk. Something in a person's face broke open fear or anger or a desperate recalculation of options. He had seen it dozens of times. Faye looked at the envelope. "Understood, Mr. Voss." She stepped forward, picked up the envelope, and turned for the door. She did not thank him. She did not argue. She did not ask for another chance. She walked out with the same measured, soundless step she had used to enter, and the door closed behind her with a soft, final click. Lucian stood in the silence she left behind and felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. The specific unease of a man who has just done something he cannot immediately classify as right or wrong. He went to the window 44 floors below. Toronto moved in its grey, purposeful way. By Monday, Faye's replacement had arrived, a young man named Patrick, who used 3 different ringtones for his phone, and brewed his coffee at the volume of a small construction project. By Tuesday, Lucian had received 2 misdirected calls, 1 meeting confirmed for the wrong date, and a vendor invoice flagged incorrectly as resolved. By Thursday evening, he was standing at Faye's old desk with his hand inside the bottom left drawer, and the drawer wasn't opening. She had left the rest of the desk spotless. Not clean, spotless, no stray paper clips, no residue in the pen tray, no forgotten notes. But this one drawer, the bottom left, was locked. She had returned her access card. She had not returned a key. Lucian found a thin steel letter opener in his own desk and worked the mechanism with the slightly embarrassed efficiency of a man who didn't want to call a locksmith for something this small. The wood splintered at the corner. The drawer slid open. Inside was a single item, a soft-covered notebook, the kind sold in packs of 3 at any pharmacy. The cover was slate grey. The handwriting inside was small, uniform, and entirely without personality. Like a font, not a hand. Dates, times, names, observations. March 4th. Catering vendor for the board dinner switched at the 48-hour mark. Original vendor, Thornfield & Co., replaced by an unknown contact operating under the name Harbor Fresh Supply. No registered business number on file. Ordered background check through secondary channel. Flagged. Lucian turned the page. March 6th. Harbor Fresh Supply confirmed shell company. Registered director has 3 prior connections to Cormac Shea's investment group. Board dinner cancelled via maintenance issue notification sent anonymously to venue. Confirmed. Food and beverage deliveries from flagged vendor were turned away. He remembered that board dinner cancellation in March. The venue had called with a burst pipe issue. He had rebooked without a second thought. He kept reading. September 12th. Vehicle registered to a numbered company with ties to the Shea Group parked in the visitor bay on level 2 for 4 hours. Driver did not enter the building. Photographed plates. Reported as suspicious to building security under a false maintenance complaint. November 3rd. External meeting on personal calendar. Party identified through secondary research as a former city permits officer under active RCMP investigation. Appointment rerouted via anonymous call to PA. New meeting redirected through corporate legal instead. The pages kept going, dozens of entries, hundreds of them. His own organization reflected back at him through the eyes of someone who had been watching every angle of his life with a precision he had never once thought to apply to her. He closed the notebook and called Rex Dolan. Rex arrived in 3 minutes. He took one look at Lucian's face and said nothing. He waited. "Pull everything from the internal cameras," Lucian said. "Last 3 weeks, starting with the morning of the Shea meeting." Rex Dolan had spent 22 years in private security across 3 different industries and was not a man who showed alarm easily. When he found Lucian 40 minutes later in the security room, he was holding a tablet in both hands, and his face was the color of old concrete. "Ground floor service corridor," Rex said. "Outside the catering prep room, 7:42 a.m., the morning of the Shea meeting." The camera angle looked down a narrow L-shaped service hall. The timestamp in the corner confirmed the time. The image was clear enough. Faye walked into frame, cardigan buttoned to the collar, carrying nothing. She was heading toward the elevator bank. A server in a white uniform emerged from the prep room, pushing a small trolley loaded with a carafe, cups, and individual water glasses intended for the boardroom. The glasses that would be set out 2 hours later, before the meeting. The server parked the trolley beside the elevator doors and stepped back into the prep room for a second load. Faye moved. She crossed to the trolley in 4 steps. From her right cardigan pocket she withdrew a small device about the size of a lip balm tube. She held it near the individual glasses without appearing to touch them. It flashed once, a reading, a scan. She stopped at the glass set slightly apart from the others, nearest the carafe. Her expression did not change. She reached into her left pocket, withdrew a folded cloth, and in a motion so practiced it looked almost incidental, she swapped the flagged glass for a clean one from the tray beneath the trolley's surface, wrapped the original in the cloth, and returned both hands to her pockets. By the time the server came back with the second load, Faye was already at the elevator, pressing the button with her elbow. Rex hit pause. The server room was completely silent except for the hum of cooling fans. "We sent the glass to a private lab this morning," Rex said. "The one wrapped in the cloth that we found in the locked drawer." He set the tablet down. "Tasteless, colorless, fast-acting, enough to cause cardiac arrest in a man with your blood pressure history within 40 minutes of ingestion." He cleared his throat. "The Shea meeting was at 10 a.m., Mr. Voss. You drank from the boardroom glasses at 9:55. Lucian heard his own heartbeat loud in the quiet room. "She intercepted a poisoning attempt," he said. The words came out slower than he intended. "At 7:42 in the morning," Rex said. "She then came upstairs, logged in, handled her entire workload, and at approximately 9:49 she received an alert on her phone. We believe from a secondary surveillance system she'd set up on the catering floor. Someone had come back to verify the glass was still in position. He pulled up a second feed, the hallway outside the bullpen. She was gone for 18 minutes confirming the glass had been intercepted, managing the individual who returned to check on it, and disposing of the evidence before coming back upstairs with your folders." Lucian stared at the frozen frame on the monitor, Faye, calm, stepping into the elevator with a poisoned glass wrapped in her cardigan pocket. He had looked her in the eye and told her she had handed his rival a weakness. He had given her an envelope and shown her the door. She had saved his life and still brought him the contracts. "There's more," Rex said. Rex pulled a second file. The footage was older, compressed with the artifacts of 4-year-old storage. A nighttime exterior of the Harbour East site office, a temporary structure on the eastern waterfront lot. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m. 4 years ago. A figure in dark clothing was working the external wiring panel with tools that suggested professional training, efficient and unhurried. From the right edge of the frame, a second figure appeared. She carried a thermos. Lucian recognized it immediately as the pale blue one that had lived on Faye's desk for years, slightly dented on the left side. She walked at a pace that looked like nothing more than someone cutting through a vacant lot on the way home. She stopped beside the panel. She said something to the figure crouching at the wiring. The figure turned. What happened next was too fast and too low resolution to follow frame by frame, but the result was unambiguous. The figure was on the ground, and Faye was crouching over the panel, carefully reversing what had been done. She worked for 6 minutes. She stood. She picked up her thermos. She walked back into the dark beyond the site perimeter. The fire that was supposed to destroy 4 years of irreplaceable project records, Rex said. The records that, if gone, would have triggered a contract default and handed 3 key developments directly to the Shea Group. He was quiet for a moment. It never happened because she reversed the wiring at 2 a.m. and walked home. Lucien sat for a long time without speaking. The security room felt like something sealed. "Find her," he said finally. Rex's expression moved in the wrong direction. "We've tried, boss. Her apartment on Spadina was cleared by Thursday morning. Landlord says she paid the remaining lease in cash and left no forwarding address, no credit activity since Wednesday. She's not using her transit card. We checked Porter Terminal, Union Station, the 401 eastbound cameras." He shook his head. "She walked out and vanished." "She's not vanished," Lucien said. "She's quiet. There's a difference." He stood up, the notebook still in his hand. "She's been quiet for 6 years and nobody in this building once noticed. That's not the same as gone." He found the thread in the notebook itself, a reference from 3 years back to a specialty hardware outlet on Gerrard Street, mentioned in a footnote about upgrading a specific lock mechanism on the service entrance. From there, patient and lateral, the way he had learned to think by reading her entries, he traced a chain of cash purchases made over several weeks. Deadbolts, a compact propane heater, a folding table from a second-hand shop on Queen Street East. Rex drove. Lucien sat with the notebook in his lap and thought about the kind of person who spends 6 years holding a wall up without ever mentioning the wall is there. The self-storage facility was on the eastern lakeshore, windswept and mostly empty on a November evening. The unit she had taken was at the end of the last row. He knocked 3 times. A long pause. Then her voice flat and unhurried through the steel door. "The facility's closed for the night." "The front office gave me your unit number for $200, Lucien said. A shorter pause this time. "That's a security gap I'll note for the future." "Faye, open the door." The deadbolt turned. She looked exactly the same. Her dark hair was loose for the first time he could remember, falling past her shoulders. Dark cargo pants, a black fleece pulled over a worn grey thermal. No cardigan. Her light brown eyes were the same, watchful, already running a calculation, and not particularly surprised to see him standing in the cold outside her door. "How did you find me?" she asked. The Gerrard Street reference in the notebook, cross-referenced with cash purchase patterns in the area. He held up the notebook. "You taught me to look at things I'd been walking past." Something crossed her face briefly, not readable enough to name. She stepped back and let him inside. The unit was small and arranged with the Spartan precision of someone who had done this before. A sleeping pad along one wall, a propane heater ticking softly in the corner, a folding table with a laptop, a cold cup of coffee, and beside it a handwritten list of names Lucien recognized as Cormac Shea's senior financial associates, several of them underlined. "You're still working," he said. "Habit," she said. He sat on the folding chair. She stayed standing. The heater ticked. "The glass," he said, "the site wiring. The vendor you flagged in March, the permits contact you rerouted in November. The entries going back 6 years. He looked at her directly, the way he should have done a long time ago. "Why didn't you tell me?" Faye was quiet for a moment, the same quality of quiet she had always carried, not hesitation, but the deliberate allocation of words. "Because if you knew what I was doing," she said, "you would have tried to manage it. You would have given me a title and a budget and put me in a room with Rex, and then I would have become something visible, something you tracked and reported to and second-guessed." She looked at the map on the wall without really looking at it. The most effective position in any system is the one nobody accounts for. The moment you account for it, it costs half its value. "You were my bookkeeper." "I was your bookkeeper," she said. "I had access to every financial record, every vendor relationship, every contract vulnerability in this company. I could see threats in their early form before they had names, and I was invisible enough to handle them before they reached your floor." A beat. "Your father understood that kind of position. He was a man who respected the work that happened in the margins." Lucien was still for a moment. "He never told me about your brother." "No," she said simply, "he wouldn't have." "Tobias." "In remission. 2 years now." Her voice didn't change register, but something in the air around the words was careful. The way she handled anything she was protective of. "He's studying engineering at Waterloo. He doesn't know the details of how we managed the treatment costs during those years. I'd prefer to keep it that way. Lucian understood that particular form of protection, the kind extended to someone without letting them know they needed it. He had watched his father practice it for most of his childhood. Edvard Voss had not been a good man in the way that phrase was generally meant, but he had been, in his own private and unlisted way, a pragmatist who believed that a person's usefulness to the world was not determined by whether the world had been fair to them first. When Faye Mercer was 22 years old, broke and sitting beside a hospital bed in sick kids while her brother's leukemia consumed the family's last reserves. When her mother had just lost her cleaning contract over a false accusation that no one with power was willing to examine, Edvard Voss had walked into the situation without fanfare and decided that it was correctable. He had vouched for them. He had paid for the first treatment cycle out of his personal account. He had never raised the subject again. Faye had carried that debt in silence for 6 years, paying it in the only currency she had, the particular invisible kind of competence that kept a man alive without him ever knowing he had been in danger. And Lucian had handed her an envelope and told her to leave her access card at reception. "Shia is going to move on the Simcoe Street parcel," Lucian said. The words felt like getting back to work, which was the only thing he knew how to do when the ground shifted under him. The poisoning failed and his people know something went wrong, even if they don't know what. He'll come at the construction financing next, try to trigger the CRA audit you flagged in your last entry. He already has, Faye said. She turned the laptop toward him. On the screen was a financial document, half-analyzed, 3 lines flagged in red. If you file the corrected Q3 supplemental before Friday noon, the audit trigger has no legal standing. The discrepancy was mine to introduce and mine to correct, and I've drafted the counterfiling. She paused. You'll need someone with a current designation to sign it. Lucian looked at the document, then he looked at her. Come back, he said. She tilted her head a fraction of a degree. As your bookkeeper? No. He stood. The storage unit was small enough that standing closed the distance between them into something that no longer resembled the professional geometry they had maintained for 6 years. The notebook comes out of the locked lock drawer. I want to know what you know, when you know it. You sit at the table, not beside it. Rex has spent 1 week trying to do half of what you were doing, and he knows exactly how badly it's going. He paused. So does he. So do I. Faye looked at him for a long moment, with the directness of someone who had spent 6 years making herself small in a room, and was now deciding whether to stop. I don't make coffee, she said. Rex makes terrible coffee, Lucian said. I've been making it myself since Thursday. It's not going well. The corner of her mouth moved. It was the same microscopic shift he now recognized from the boardroom footage, from the sight camera, from 6 years of a face he had looked at without seeing. Not quite a smile, the acknowledgement that something had already been decided, and that the deciding had taken considerably less time than either of them was going to admit. She reached across the table and turned the laptop back toward herself. Her fingers moved across the keys with the same quiet, absolute certainty that had once made her invisible to him. The filing needs to go in before Friday noon, she said, and the service entrance access codes need to be changed by tomorrow morning. 14 months is an unreasonable window. Done, he said. He stood beside her and looked at the flagged lines on the screen and understood, in a way that had nothing to do with the contracts or the money or the waterfront parcels, that the most protected thing he owned had always been that quiet desk outside his office door. He had spent 11 years building something he believed was untouchable. He had never once considered that the untouchable part had nothing to do with him.